Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility. Together they make the Deathly Hallows. Together they make one Master of Death. The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living. And above all those who live without love.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 9, A Place to Hide. Jenn is with us tonight.
Hey guys.
And we have a couple of shout outs before we get into the episode. And firstly, if you've been following our social media lately, you'll see that we participated in trivia, Harry Potter trivia recently at Rosati's in New Lenox. And it was through Brainbuster Trivia, which you could find them on Instagram at Brainbuster Trivia. We've tagged a couple of their things, especially on Instagram, on our story. So we try to shout them out. We're very thankful that they had us. We did quite well, which we were thankful for because, you know, we kind of do a Harry Potter podcast. We kind of should do well. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of really great Harry Potter fans there. We got a lot of interaction. Obviously, we wore some podcast shirts. So it was a fun night. So we're definitely looking forward to doing it again. So thank you for Rosati's for hosting. Thank you to Brainbuster Trivia for putting on Harry Potter trivia. We also have a couple of shout-outs. We have AV, who left a comment on Deathly Hallows Chapter 7, The Will of Albus Dumbledore. AV says, Rufus says that the Deluminator is very valuable. Why? I am just going to go with the idea that, one, he says it's a fairly unique item, so I would imagine it's one of a kind, literally. Also, it's made by Albus Dumbledore, which I think adds a little piece of value to it, kind of like you're getting a jersey at a sporting goods store. That's great, and that has a price. But if you're getting a jersey that was worn by someone in a game, that's more expensive, is how I'm going to try to piece this together. I don't know, what do you think?
I like that you went with the practical application of it, and I immediately jumped to, there's a quote in, I don't remember which book it is, where it's happiness can be found even in the darkest of places if one only remembers to turn on the light or something like that. And I feel like the Deluminator is just like that sentiment in an item. Okay, so you're thinking like the use of it. Yeah, sometimes things just need to click for you in order for you to get a better understanding of the situation or to shine light on the situation or to progress in some ways. And I think that the Deluminator, literally with clicking to put light into a situation, is just that metaphor as an object. I'm smiling because, well, first, I love that sentiment. I agree with that sentiment completely. But I'm smiling because Ron does not get any of that at all. That's why Elvis left it for him. Yeah. He's like, you need a little extra help. No, I think there's a couple of reasons that Rufus is like, hey, this is a pretty unique item and it's pretty valuable, so why would he leave it to a random teenager who he clearly does not have a relationship with? But hopefully that answers the question. Brian also left a comment on Deathly Hallows Chapter 7. And the comment is, when I first read this, I thought Rufus was a werewolf and a supporter of Voldy. That's an interesting take. Visually I can see how you would make that assumption, because they describe him as like a mane of hair, a rough kind of look about him. Especially here in this particular scene, The Will of Albus Dumbledore, he looks ragged. Yeah. He's been through it. So he looks a little bit rough around the edges, in addition to that mane of hair that he's got. So
from a descriptive point of view, I could see where you're going with it.
Yeah. I think from a descriptive standpoint, I never thought of it that way, but that's an interesting way to think of it.
Good thought from Brian. If anyone else wants to get shouted out on the podcast and have us discuss your theories, comments, questions, whatever have you, please leave a comment on our Instagram, on our Twitter. You can even check us out on YouTube. That's at HogwartsAPod. You can also leave a comment on Spotify, participate in our polls on Spotify. There's lots of ways to interact with us, so we really look forward to hearing from you. I know we've had a lot of interesting episodes lately where we've had some interesting points of view. Me having hot take after hot take sometimes, so we like to hear your feedback on what you guys think about some of those hot takes. I think we're going to get some feedback from Jenn on one of those hot takes at some point, so that'll always be interesting. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's get into this chapter, A Place to Hide. And we start off basically where we left off in the last chapter. And I didn't play this in the last chapter, but I have to play this audio now because I love this audio from the movie.
This is one of my favorite lines.
It's one of my favorite lines.
Like,
I love it in the book. I
Yep.
love it in the movie. It's just so good. So let's play the line for you so everybody can actually hear it.
The ministry has fallen. The minister of magic is dead. They are coming. They are coming.
Yeah, I love that line. It's suspenseful. It fills you with dread.
Yes.
And to hear that menace, I can only describe it as a menacing whisper from Kingsley, and you end the chapter on that. It's fantastic.
It's a chilling way to end a chapter.
And we start with the obvious response to said dread: chaos.
Panic.
Absolute chaos and panic. And everybody's realizing those words that were said. The ministry has fallen. The minister is dead. Well, that's not good. So we need to get out of here.
It's terrifying to hear that the ministry has fallen. It's terrifying to hear that the minister is dead. But then to end it on the "they're coming" is, if you're not already panicked at the state of affairs, that they are coming is just chills.
I feel like it's, ooh, that was bad. Ooh, that was worse.
Yep.
Oh no.
Yep.
Like,
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, the longer he talks, the
Yep.
worse and worse this is getting. So people start panicking. They start disapparating. Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting because the protective enchantments that were around the burrow had prevented such magic from being done. So that means, obviously, the protective enchantments have been broken. Obviously, the Order and the Ministry together put these in place. So if the Ministry has fallen, that means everybody knows what the enchantments are and thus how to break them. So not good.
No.
Obviously, cloaked and masked figures start appearing in the crowd. And Hermione and Harry are like, where is Ron? We need to get him. So they eventually find him and they disapparate immediately.
Ron's having a good time. It's a wedding, you got a party.
It's a party, there's nothing wrong with that, except when all chaos breaks out. Hermione very quickly apparates out of there with 2 sidelong apparition, which she just learned how to do this, like 6 months ago, maybe?
She's good.
Like, yeah, that's a quick study, Hermione, which we always knew, but this is practically applying a rather difficult piece of magic.
I love this chapter for the reason that you really get to see Hermione's type A shine through.
I think Hermione is the clear, without even really any sort of doubt, MVP for this chapter.
100%.
In so many different ways. But we'll get to some of them. They appear at Tottenham Court Road in London. And Hermione's like, this is just the first thing I thought of. It's a high muggle density area, so they shouldn't really find us here. They shouldn't think to find us here. Thought it would be a good spot, which Harry gets a lot of the credit for being the quick thinker of the group. And I thought this was a pretty good job by Hermione.
No, this is great because they're not familiar with the muggle world. Mm-hmm. That's the one advantage that Hermione and Harry have here.
And it's crowded. Like, it'd just be hard in general to find 3 teenagers in a mass of people.
Well, they are wearing wizarding cloaks.
That is true. So that they do have to change. And Hermione has the answer for that, too. She has a change of clothes and Harry's invisibility cloak in small handbag that she's placed an undetectable extension charm on. Which, next level.
If there was one spell that you could use from Harry Potter in the real world.
We put up a poll with that as the question, and I will admit I did not have the undetectable extension charm as part of this. My answer is Reparo. It would save everybody a lot of money.
That's fair.
Your toilet breaks, Reparo. Your glasses break, Reparo. Your car breaks down, Reparo. Like, it would be a super convenient spell.
Yeah.
What would yours be?
This, I'm not sure it would be this, but this just, it strikes me as one of the more practical spells.
This has a lot. I think this spell and whatever spell they used on the tent to make like an ordinary tent into like a 3-bedroom suite.
I'm always, I'm a fan of things that help you optimize space without giving up capacity or room or something like that. Like, I would love to have something like that in like my apartment. Cast that same spell that they used on the tent in like a closet, right? Like, something like that would be really nice.
It would be so much. I mean, you could turn like a 1-bedroom apartment into...
Yeah, penthouse.
Yeah, exactly. So I will give you the actual results. We have, if you could learn and use one spell in your everyday life, which would you choose? Lumos has 0%. No one wants Lumos.
Because, Lumos is going to be, I think, a really hard one because most smartphones nowadays have a flashlight.
That's fair. That is fair. Nobody wanted Alohomora either.
That's surprising.
It has its uses. If you had a lock,
yeah,
you lock your keys in your car, got locked out of your apartment, got locked out of your office at work, it's could be a useful spell. Wingardium Leviosa does have that one vote that I mentioned.
I respect that.
Yeah. Accio is at 42%.
Okay.
Reparo is at 50% of the vote. So Reparo and Accio tend to be.
Of the ones that you listed on that, I think Reparo would be the best. I like the space expander.
Yeah, the undetectable extension charm, or the making the tent super spacious.
Something that is kind of along
one of those
lines.
Would be a worthy addition for sure.
Yes.
However, there is a drawback. There's like a catch to it because she's made the space so expansive that she gave it a little bit of a shake. It sounds like a cargo hold in like a ship or something. And she was like, it's probably the books. And all the books fell over, and now she's got to reorganize. How does she reorganize such a big space? Does she go into the bag herself?
I was trying to picture that, because she said that she had them all ordered by subject.
Is the bag itself what extends, or does everything get super, super small as you put it in?
That's, again, a really good question.
Like, how does this work?
No, it has to be that... I always pictured it as just, it's this, like, entryway to a void. Like, it's like a pocket first, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. But now I'm like, how do you... like?
I don't know how
she,
you
like,
go into
halfway,
the
like,
first
head and shoulders into this thing, trying to, like...
That would make me so nervous to do by myself. I would want someone else to, like, make sure I don't fall in. Because then how do you get back out?
Maybe she does it by magic and just, like, moves it around with her wand, like, puts her hand in. And...
Why do I feel like that was the most obvious answer that we both missed?
We're going for the fun, fanciful answers first. Let us never apologize for being absolutely ridiculous first, and then logic second. That's fine. Anyway, they are astounded at Hermione's forethought to have everything packed and ready to go. And she's like, I just had a feeling. I had a feeling something might happen at the wedding, so I had it on me.
She's good.
Fantastic. Harry does think about going back to the wedding to help all of the people being attacked by the Death Eaters.
Of course he does.
And Ron and Hermione quickly kill that idea by being like, they're going for you. They want you. So by going back, you're putting everybody in more danger. So let's not do that. And to Harry's credit, he does quickly come off of that idea of like, okay, you're right. What are we going to do now? As they're walking to their eventual location, which is a cafe, there's a spot where Hermione's getting like wolf whistled.
Yes.
That's an interesting little addition that she's putting into this chapter, isn't it?
When I was rereading that, not only did I not remember that, but I also was like, why is this in here?
Do you cringe a little bit?
Yeah.
Like just reading it?
Like it doesn't serve anything.
It doesn't really. So I thought about it. You're right. It doesn't really serve the bigger picture at all. Other than, I suppose, world building and that they're in a realistic cityscape. But two, I guess what this reestablishes is Hermione is now very attractive from what the portrayal of her used to be in the first couple books.
I can understand why that might be some level of relevant to know in the books, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why this was the way that it was.
It's a weird comment.
It's so weird.
It's
to
a weird
me.
comment.
I don't think it aged well, and it's just really weird. It's really uncomfortable.
Yes. They eventually seek safety in the cafe, and Harry, under the invisibility cloak, is starting to notice the polyjuice wearing off. And, they're talking, they order, Hermione, again, very with it, orders 2 cappuccinos, not 3, which is just really smart on her part, because it would look really odd if you ordered 3.
Hermione's at the top of her game in this
She's
chapter.
clicking on all cylinders right now. She is really performing well. But I do like also the idea, first of all, why did you put Hermione back to the entrance of the cafe? Like, Harry, I get, but if Hermione is clicking right now, wouldn't you want her being the lookout?
Yeah, over Ron.
Yeah.
No offense, Ron.
Yeah, that just seems like a weird... If I was Hermione, I'd be like, no, you sit there, I'm sitting here to keep an eye on the door.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's not, even though she's, turning her head so quick that she's developing some sort of, kink in her neck, I would assume.
I was going to say, that hurt my neck.
Yeah. But she doesn't notice 2 men enter the cafe until they're already, well inside the building. And they lower the level of their discussion. They lower the volume, and Hermione mentions that she might be able to get a message out to the Order based on doing the talking Patronus that we just saw at the end of the wedding. And Ron is like, you can do that? And Ron's like, yeah, I've been practicing. I think I can handle it. Where did she find time to practice all of this? With all the work that Molly had been having them do at the Burrow, she must have been she went to work in June. Or July, I guess.
Yeah.
She must have been putting in some hours of practice.
Maybe we just never see her doing it because Harry and Ron are too busy hanging out with each other.
Maybe, I guess. But that's a neat bit of magic to pull off, the talking Patronus. Which also begs the question, why didn't anybody in the Order actually try to teach them that in the meantime?
I feel like there were some missed opportunities.
I feel this is right up Lupin's alley. You taught Harry about the Patronus to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a nice little fun twist that he could have been... I get he's busy. I know he has his own work that he's got to do, but...
You would think, though, that one of the priorities for the Order would have been getting Harry, Ron, and Hermione...
a way to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat more prepared for some sort of eventuality where they may have to split up.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Not everything the Order does is perfect.
That's fair.
Or they have time to do. I get it. They're all busy. They're all being attacked. But still. Clearly a very important fact that we learn in this chapter, and I think it's maybe one of the most important things we learn in this chapter. Ron, not a fan of a cappuccino. Not a fan.
Well, to be fair, it was described as gray, which I'm not a coffee drinker, but even I know that it's not supposed to be gray.
Maybe it's, this is London, it's not Paris, but it's the gray stuff, it's delicious kind of bit. I don't know.
Again, our fandoms crossed.
Yeah, we try. Harry ends up watching the men pretty closely. He's like, I just feel something's off about them. And then they suddenly make a movement. He mirrors their movement exactly, and chaos ensues once again. Tiles end up exploding where Ron used to be, because after all these spells go off, he just dives across the table to knock Hermione out of the way.
Which is sweet.
Yeah, no, it's a quick reaction by Ron, because I believe Hermione was she was looking at something. She was looking in her handbag or something like that. She wasn't watching the 2 men at this point. So Ron dives across, knocks her out of the way. Tiles explode where he used to be. Harry hits a giant blonde Death Eater in the face with Stupefy, which the accuracy is on point. Ron ends up bound by black ropes from the other Death Eater. Harry hits the waitress who brought Ron the terrible cappuccino with a rebounding, stunning spell. So he shot the spell, it missed, bounces off a window, hits the waitress. So she's out as she was sprinting towards the door, being like, what is going on right now?
This poor woman.
Yeah, she's having a night. Harry ends up getting hit by the force of an expulso spell, which exposes him under the invisibility cloak. So the Death Eater hit the table behind them with the spell, thus sending like what I'm viewing as almost like a little shockwave out from, like a little mini explosion. And he gets knocked over by that. And Hermione ends up hitting that Death Eater with Petrificus Totalis. What do you think about this little interchange of action?
This was a lot in a short amount of time. Like, this escalated very quickly. And you have to give them credit, too, for just how quickly they were able to respond.
Yeah.
Like, that was a lot of quick thinking.
And accurately.
Yeah.
I think all of the spells were done really accurately for how stressful the situation was and how out of nowhere it was.
Yeah.
That being said, Hermione does make one misstep in this chapter, and that is as she's trying to cut Ron's bindings, she also cuts his knee, because she's kind of in shock over what just happened.
Ouch.
So yeah, there's a little deep gash on his knee that really needs to be addressed, but we'll get there. So we take inventory. What has happened? There's a waitress that's stunned on the floor by the door. There's two Death Eaters who are immobile. We find out that one is named Thorfinn Rowell. That's the large blonde Death Eater who Harry stupefied in the face. And Harry notes that Rowell was at Hogwarts when Albus died. Doesn't exactly clarify where. And I did try to double check this between, like, was he the other Death Eater on the astronomy tower? We know, obviously, the Carrows were, Greyback was, but there was a brutal-faced looking Death Eater as well, but we don't get any more description of that. He doesn't describe Thorfinn Rowell as brutal-faced, it's just large blonde. So I imagine he wasn't the one on the astronomy tower is what I'm taking away from that.
It's not much to go on.
It's not much to go on. But anyway, Rowell was there that night. The other Death Eater, hey, it's Dolohov.
Hey.
My guy, Dolohov. He's petrified. And his eyes are just darting between each of the individuals that's standing above him. The trio's a little flustered at the moment. There's a lot of questions. The main one being, how did they possibly find them?
This is the middle of Muggle London.
Yeah, out of nowhere. There's no reason for them to be there. They have no connection to this place. And they found them almost instantly. Amongst the panic and concern and flustered nature of the three, Harry seems to have his mind cleared amongst all of panic, which tends to be a Harry Potter trait.
I was going to say,
usually.
Harry operates best when he's under immense amounts of stress.
Like 9.5 times out of 10.
Yeah.
He does pretty well in this situation. So he immediately has them lock the door and turn out the lights, which Ron was like, I got it. Click.
Yeah.
My job from here on out, turn off the lights. So they lock the door, turn out the lights. Then it gets very, very dark all of a sudden because they're like, well, what do we do here? Because, and I think Ron mentions it, if it was them, they'd kill us. Yeah. Do we kill them? We kill them, right? Like, that's the natural step here. And Harry's says, no, altering their memory would work better because then it would throw them off the scent better.
And that is a really good tactical response.
So I'm going to ask you this question. It is a tactical response. I agree with you there. Yeah. Which would you do?
See,
they're both plausibly correct answers, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're in a war. They are trying to kill you.
That's the thing. I think in that scenario, I'm probably leaning more on...
You are a Slytherin. Lean into your
I know. This is another one of those things where it's like, I'm going to say something that I don't necessarily 100% agree with, but like, and my back's against the wall, and I'm dealing with the darkest, evilest wizard of all time. I don't want to have to like... See, here's the thing. So, from a tactical perspective, I think Harry's making some good points about, you know, just, we won't kill him, we'll leave him, you know, it looks worse because then it definitely shows we were here versus they're failing. Makes sense. The problem that I look at it, the opposite way that I look at it is, these are 2 fewer Death Eaters than I may have to contend with in the future. There's already enough of them.
We don't know that much about Raoul. We do know that Dolohov is a grade A killer.
Yes.
Like, he is a problem.
Yes. So if I'm a high schooler in a war against an army of dark wizards, I'm probably going to try to take what I can get to my advantage. I'm not proud of that, but that's how I would look at it.
I guess my counter to Harry's plan of alter their memory, clean this place up, no one will know we're here, is, and I'm going to be fairly blunt with this, who cares? If you were at Tottenham, you're not going to probably return there anyway.
Yeah.
So who cares that you went there? Does it really matter?
You have an opportunity to have... You have the upper hand in this scenario. I don't want to have to face Dolohov again.
I get you. I think we've stumbled on the poll for the episode.
Yes.
Would you kill these Death Eaters, or would you alter their memories? That will be the poll. Let us know what you guys think. I think there is really a valid argument for either option.
There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, I mean, you could... Let me ask you this. What do you think other members of the Order would do? What do you think Lupin would do? What do you think Kingsley would do? Keep in mind, they gave Harry the advice of, we're in a war, why are you using Expelliarmus in that battle scene of the Seven Potters?
I think that's a really good question. My initial thought is, I think any of the Aurors would probably approach it by saying, can I take them somewhere and get additional answers out of them?
It's a plausible way of doing it, too. So if Lupin or Kingsley finds himself in this situation, the 2 Death Eaters have been immobilized.
Yeah.
They're no longer a present threat. What do they do?
For some reason, I feel like Kingsley would probably off them. I think Lupin, just because Kingsley seems a lot more aggressive to me. Like, assertive.
Assertive, yeah. I can buy assertive.
Yeah. Lupin just feels passive to me. So I feel like Shacklebolt would be...
He'd be the more inclined one to end it?
Yeah. Maybe I won't say that he would, but I think of the 2, he'd be the more inclined one.
I disagree.
Really?
I think Lupin would be more inclined to killing the 2 Death Eaters.
Interesting. Why?
Purely based on his reaction to Harry using Expelliarmus of like, dude, what are you doing? This is war. They're trying to kill you. Yeah. You need to respond in turn. Yeah. Just that advice, I'm like, I don't think Lupin would really hesitate.
That's fair.
Yeah, he might hesitate, but ultimately...
most people, I think, in that scenario would hesitate.
Yeah.
It's a heavy thing.
It's not a decision to take lightly, and I know the adults in the situation have been through this not once, but twice. Yeah. So they might be a little bit more apt for a more violent solution to the problem, but...
This may not be the first time that they have been put in that position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. So, obviously, they end up all deciding to go with the altered memory form of dealing with this.
I do find it funny for someone who's in a war, Harry's like the ultimate pacifist.
He does opt for a more peaceful solution more often than not, which is surprising given he tends to be trigger happy a lot. Right. Like, I guess with it's Malfoy specifically, when it's Draco, all bets are off, fire away. When it's literally anybody else, wait, we can figure this out, guys, we're good. Right? I think that tracks.
No, I think you're right.
Hermione, because she is the best one at spells in general, and she clearly seems to be the most put together one right now, she gets tabbed with doing the memory magic. and she opts for the spell Obliviate. She also says she hasn't done this type of magic before. And I know what some of our listeners might be thinking at this point in time, because I thought it when reading this. So we're gonna talk about it. Didn't she just modify and alter the memories of her parents?
Okay, so that is a question that gets brought up a lot. So I follow the Harry Potter subreddit, and I've seen that question a million times come up on this. And that is actually something that was added to the movies. So in the movies, when they have the scene that Hermione is, performing a spell on her parents, it's Obliviate.
Yep.
She says Obliviate. You can see her fading in and out of the photos.
And then she does it again, Obliviate, in the diner.
Yes. So for the movies, that does not track. For the books, Hermione actually does not do Obliviate. They don't specifically name which spell Hermione uses in the books, but it's more of a fake memory charm. So from my understanding of it, I'm also referencing, there's a good Screen Rant article on this too. If you use Obliviate, you can't reverse it. It causes irreparable damage. So they have a couple of examples of this where in Chamber of Secrets, Dumbledore says that he can't restore the memories of Lockhart's victims because Lockhart was obliviating them. And then again in Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort and Peter Pettigrew torture Bertha Jorkins to the point that the memory charm put on her by Barty Crouch gets broken, it completely messes her up. It damages her mind beyond repair. What Hermione did, they're classifying as like a fake memory charm, which was, I'm not 100% on the specifics because I don't think that JK ever went into any amount of detail on this, but it is mentioned that Hermione did it with the intent to be able to reverse it in the future. So it's less that she's erasing her parents' memories and more that she's either rewriting them or compartmentalizing them or kind of adding in an additional set of memories. So like the way that I'm looking at it in my headcanon is essentially that what Hermione did was kind of like adding in additional things, and obliviating is subtracting things from you. Like that's kind of how
That makes sense. I can definitely understand how the two spells would be different. I think a lot of people quibble on, even though they might be different spells, they still deal with memory magic. So how different can they really be? So I guess my question to you is, given the explanations you just read, which excellent, and what's in the books here, how do you feel about all that?
I feel like Obliviate is more complicated because you're not adding in additional, it's like your brain is kind of primed to take additional input. So adding something in is easier than like cutting something out. So like when she says that she's not doing memory magic,
it's like Inception.
It's more of, like it's the more complexities that she's not able to handle.
I guess it is. I guess now me saying that, if anyone has actually watched the movie Inception, what it is the idea that you're planting a memory or you're planting an idea so deep inside someone they think it's their own genuine idea.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what Hermione's trying to do with the idea of like, move to Australia and stuff like that, which that I understand. It's the idea of Hermione not existing anymore, like they don't have a daughter, which I get kind of stuck on. I guess my ultimate thing is like, I don't love it. And especially being like 2 chapters away from each other or whatever it is, like a couple of chapters away. It's like you just said memory manipulation. It's just a little odd to me.
I think there could have been a little bit, I mean, we're just speculating on what the differences are, but I think that there could have definitely been a little bit more exposition as to why what she did is different.
Yeah.
Or less complicated.
That would have made it a lot
whatever.
better.
Yeah.
That would have settled better.
I think that there is an argument to be made that it is different. It's just the question of like, okay.
Is it making that big of a difference?
Right. Like, if you're going to put that line in, why?
Yeah, I agree. Again, one of these debate, questionable things. We're interpreting it one way. I think, Jenny had a great breakdown as to why it might not be the same. You guys, listeners, let us know your 2 cents on it. But yeah, so while Hermione is doing this magic, Ron and Harry end up cleaning up the diner. And it's at this point that Harry hints ever so slightly at splitting up after the suggestion that he still might be marked. Because they're obviously still talking about, like, dude, how did they find us?
Yeah.
And the idea is like, well, did they have the trace on you still? Did they keep it on you? Like, how does that even work? And Harry's like, well, if I still have the trace on me, you guys aren't safe, so let's split up. And once again, Ron and Hermione are like, no. No, we're not doing that. Just so we're clear, not splitting up, nor shall we ever split up. That's not happening.
I like that he keeps bringing it up and that they keep just shooting it down aggressively.
I understand where Harry's coming from because it's genuine. He really doesn't want to put anyone else in harm's way. That's not something he wants or feels good about. So he's being genuine. It's not like, oh, I just want to be alone kind of thing. It's a genuine concern for others, which separates Harry from a lot of our, villains in this world.
I think it's sweet that he cares. I just think it's funny that, like, he keeps trying, but he's not going to win.
No. And it's not like he fights it a whole lot either. It's like once they say, no, we're staying with you, and then he's like, okay. Like, he doesn't fight it a ton either. He presents the idea, they say no, and he's like, all right.
You could still leave now.
So they end up settling on a familiar location, Grimmauld Place. Why didn't they immediately go to Grimmauld Place? There's a concern there that the Order has. So it's a fairly founded concern that it's not safe anymore, that it's been given up. The idea of the protections on it being diluted because now there's 20 people that are the Secret Keeper instead of just the one.
Yep.
And the idea that Snape is one of those people who very much knows the location of it.
Doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
No. The Order did mention that they have, since Snape proofed the place, in case he were to return, Moody specifically set up a couple of surprises for him, should he return. And that's what they run into when they get to Grimmauld Place. They step into the house, and immediately Moody's voice, which you can only imagine hearing that must put you immediately, given the recent events. But Moody's voice says, Severus Snape, in a questioning tone. And then all of their tongues roll backward.
That sounds so unpleasant.
That does not... How far can your tongue roll backward? It's connected to the bottom of your mouth. Like, I don't know how... And I'm also picturing, imagining, like, a fruit roll-up that's being, like, rolled up.
Pretty much exactly what I pictured.
Okay, good. Okay, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Not comfortable. I can't imagine that's a super great feeling. I could also imagine people, like, trying to gag after that.
I think that's what Hermione was like. Or wasn't it Ron? One of them was gagging.
Yeah, it can't be comfortable.
No.
So, the tongues roll backward. A figure then rises up, and it ends up being a dusty, zombified ghost of Albus that appears out of nowhere. And it comes toward them, reaching out. Harry yells, "No, we didn't kill you." And on the word kill, the figure explodes. Welcome to Grimmauld Place. So, very welcoming. I think obviously the idea is if Snape were to appear, the tongue rolls backward and then he's not able to enunciate no or anything. I didn't kill you, I didn't do anything, and then... But then what happens? Does the ghost, kill him? Does a zombie ghost kill him? Or what happens? Does it possess him? That'd be cool. I don't know that that's possible, but that'd be cool.
The zombie ghost possesses Snape.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know what the end goal is.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens, but it's fun to imagine Moody being like, if this traitor ever steps foot in a place where I have set up protections, he is going to pay for it.
Maybe it's just to scare him.
Maybe, scare him into a paralysis of some sort.
Just okay, I'm not going any further.
It is interesting, and maybe this is a note to how threatening Snape is to them. Well, I could take this two ways. You could take it the general way, which is what the probable truth is of Snape's probably given the location to other Death Eaters, and now they have the place staked out, and it's a group protecting the location. Mm-hmm. But you could also take it as, like, they must respect Snape's ability if the idea of him going there has dissuaded the rest of the Order going there.
Yeah.
Like, that, he must have a presence.
I would imagine he has a presence, and then I would also imagine it would just kind of be like, he has already proven that he played them for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that that's also...
He also played a role in the Seven Potters battle, too. He's coming after them. I mean, he's not holding back just because he spent so much time with them.
Right.
You know, he's going for it, so... Yeah.
Plus, because Snape played them for so long, he also does know a substantial amount about the Order, right? So it's like it's not just that he's a very powerful wizard, it's also that he is just a massive threat.
He's a very powerful wizard who is very well informed.
Yes.
Which, that's a problem.
Dangerous combination.
So Hermione's like, you know what, this is stupid. Hominum Revelio. And she finds out nobody's home. Which I like Ron in this scenario is like, I know you've been through a lot tonight, but what was that supposed to do? And she's like, it means no one's home.
Oh no, in my mind what he says is even worse, because he's like, oh, it's okay that it didn't work.
Yeah, it's a little condescending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that rubs me
It does
the
come
wrong
across,
way.
yeah. You've been through a lot. It's okay.
Like, dude, why are you doubting Hermione's magic?
Yeah, there's really no reason to.
No reason.
None.
She has saved your butt how many times?
Yeah,
tonight?
It's just tonight alone.
Right.
As they step further into Grimmauld Place, Harry's scar burns, and he learns that Voldy is kind of angry. Ron and Hermione obviously pelt him with questions like, dude, why is this still happening? Well, they pelt him with different questions, I should say. Hermione pelts him with the, why is this happening? You're supposed to shut this off. You can't have this, for obvious reasons.
You need to shut this off. Start shutting it off. Do you remember what happens when you don't shut it off? Like, Hermione's...
Used a vivid example of which Harry responds with, I'm aware. I do remember that instance. It's kind of... no pun intended, scarring me. Ron, on the other hand, is like, ooh, what's happening? Who's he angry at? Like, is everybody okay? I poke fun, but he is trying to find out, like, is everybody okay? Is everybody at the Burrow okay? Do you see anything? Do you see anybody you know? Do you see the Burrow? Like, he's trying to be, not trying to be, he is concerned. He's genuinely concerned.
Yeah. He's trying to use anything that he can get to his advantage to find out what the state of things are, because they have been isolated.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, Arthur's Patronus appears. Stunningly, it's a weasel, as we mentioned in a previous episode. Arthur's Patronus, however, is a little less intimidating than Kingsley's. The Patronus essentially says, family safe, do not reply, we are being watched. Which... Again, I admire the Order for being concise, to the point, getting a full, just well-rounded message out, but in as few words as possible. Family is safe, do not reply, being watched. Like, great.
Yeah.
Do you think they have, like, as an Order, do you think Dumbledore got them together and workshopped, like, possible distress messages of, like, guys, you gotta keep this short and to the point. Like, did someone send, like, a message via Patronus and it was, like, a novel? Like, it was sentences deep? Like, if Arthur sent this, would it be like, Bill's okay, him and Flora are about to go on their honeymoon, you know, the twins are having fun, they're joking around already, Molly's in a state, but when is she never in a state, so we'll just be fine. And then it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And Dumbledore at some point is like, okay, can we clip this just a little bit? Can we edit this down to where we need to be? Do you ever think the Patronus would get tired? Or fade as it's going, like, down this novel? Start slurring the words that it's supposed to communicate?
If Patronus is a cat, and the cat just decides halfway through to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm out.
I'm done. All right, this is over. Oh, there's a side tangent for everybody. Hope you enjoyed that one. Eventually, Harry succumbs to the scar pain. And he delves into Voldy's world, and he sees Raoul, the big blonde Death Eater from the diner, screaming and writhing in pain. And Voldy even threatens to feed Raoul to Nagini, which that's a threat.
Yeah.
And Harry, I imagine the view just pans out a little bit, and you just see, Draco standing to the side with his wand pointed at Raoul, and Harry realizes it's Draco that's actually the one punishing Raoul. Voldy's just there to interrogate, demean, and threaten, which there's so much you can take from that. One, the threat from Voldy to feed him to Nagini, that must be terrifying. And two, I can't imagine what's going through Raoul's mind of he means it. I believe him. I really believe him. And I've already seen Nagini eat a person, at least once that we know of.
I would imagine that it's not an infrequent occurrence.
I get that vibe too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing I'm getting from this is notice how it's Raoul being tortured, not Dolohov.
That's a good point.
And now, I will, for everybody that's screaming at me right now listening to this, I understand that we could just be seeing Raoul being tortured. That doesn't mean Dolohov hasn't already or won't in the future be tortured. But if I'm taking this as a snapshot as what happened, I imagine it's indicative of the pecking order amongst the Death Eaters. I imagine Dolohov has a higher standing amongst them, and Raoul lower and has accomplished less for Voldy. Therefore, he's taking out his anger on the subordinate of the two. Would be my analysis of it.
I think that makes sense.
We've talked a lot on this non-spoiler section. We've had some tangents, we've had some debate, we've had a bunch of things. A lot of information. Let us know what you all think on everything we've discussed in this non-spoiler. And we will pause here, take a short break, and we will be back with the spoiler section. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf.
And we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 9, A Place to Hide. You had some Draco Malfoy thoughts.
I was really intrigued by this chapter upon rereading it when we got to the part of Voldemort making Malfoy torture roll. This is another thing where I feel like this is a great example of what a missed opportunity it was for a Malfoy redemption later on.
Okay.
Because you see that he's so...
You were really gunning for this Malfoy redemption arc that isn't.
When we first started this podcast, it was really only one of my, minor things that I thought about in the book. And really over the course of this reread, it has become, my albatross. No, it's become, it every step of the way now when I'm rereading this. Because this is the first time that I've reread the books since I was put in Slytherin. since I was sorted into Slytherin. So I've taken on a little bit of a different perspective with it. And it really just sticks out to me as like this was the most egregious thing that these books were missing. They really, I think, missed the mark on having some sort of redemption for Slytherin in some form. I think that would have wrapped everything up with a neat bow. And I can understand why she might not have wanted to go that route because it, leaves some element of realism in it. But it feels like when we're looking at things like this, it feels like this is where like the thread is kind of being woven. Mm-hmm. For something like that, you start to feel sympathy for Malfoy. You start to realize that he is a total jerk. He's made terrible decisions, but he's also been kind of groomed for that his whole life. Like, he is in the place that his parents wanted to be, that he had originally wanted to be, and he is a victim in this as well. And I don't know, I started to feel a lot of sympathy towards him. Like, I felt genuinely bad that here's this kid, he's just a kid who is making these ill-informed decisions based off of what his parents are telling him, and now he's in a place where he is actively being abused, I think. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair to say, by being forced to torment another person. Because I think Voldemort also says, do you want to feel it again?
Yep.
So he's already been tortured.
Yeah. And torture has a lot of meanings too, because he's seen what his dad has gone through, and that's probably not a pleasant feeling for Draco. And yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, it seemed like he was on the verge of an emotional breakdown last school year with having to.
Mm-hmm. I think we can safely say that being under Voldy's employ is a toxic environment. I think we can safely come to that conclusion. I agree with you. I think the books kind of fail the other houses. Obviously, it's prominently featuring Gryffindor, as it should, given where the point of view of our main character is. I totally understand Gryffindor being the major focus of the books.
Yes.
I'm not
begrudging that at all.
Not begrudging that at all. I totally understand, and it's great, and I love the look at the Gryffindors that we get. Awesome.
Yes.
To your point about Slytherins, obviously this focuses a lot about Gryffindor versus Slytherin, but the only side of Slytherin we ever get is a negative one, which can't possibly be true. They can't 100% be awful people.
Yeah.
And then Ravenclaw we just get bits and pieces of, and Hufflepuff is, for the large amount of the books, completely ignored.
Yeah.
100%. And I know when she was doing other things, like, for example, the Cursed Child, I think is supposed to... I think that's supposed to be your redemption for Slytherin.
I've always thought that.
Because of Scorpius as a Slytherin, and then obviously Albus Severus.
Yeah.
That, I think Cursed Child is your redemption arc for the House of Slytherin, if not Draco, because it's not really for Draco.
Right. I think it's more of what you're saying.
That's where it's supposed to be at.
Yeah.
And then she intended the Fantastic Beast movies to be Hufflepuff's moment. I think there's actually that quote out from her about
really?
that. This is Hufflepuff's moment, because Newt is a Hufflepuff.
Okay.
And that's obviously the main character. However, I will challenge, 1, those movies were not good. 2, they got worse as they went on. And 3, it doesn't really ever focus on the fact that he is a Hufflepuff. I think they mention it like one time when they're in an interrogation room and they mention the Hufflepuff status.
Yeah.
That's it. So I have a hard time buying that.
I don't think that it counts if it's outside of Hogwarts, because the way that we see the houses interact occurs in Hogwarts. Like, you're going to have the most house pride when you're in Hogwarts.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they could have done a better job, to your point, of being more inclusive with the other houses. I actually thought fairly early on in the series that that's what they were trying to do with, like, Hannah Abbott and, like, Ernie. And Justin and all of those characters where they kind of did come up a lot in Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
And I was always a little bit surprised that then they just kind of fell back into being background characters. So, like, I felt like that was kind of a missed opportunity to try to, like, because it always seemed very cliquish in the sense that I understand if you only have classes with your house, you're only going to be friends with the people in your house. But they very clearly had many classes that they interacted with other houses. And it's just interesting to me. I don't know if that's just typical of how, like, you know, because the house system is based on actual schools in Britain. I don't know if that's just typical of how schools were in Britain, and she's just writing from her experience, but it always felt like there was so much opportunity there for more interactions that just kind of got by the wayside. And I think I completely agree with your point that Cursed Child was supposed to be like Slytherin House's redemption. I think that it fails because it's too little, it's too late, and it's not as poignant as what it could have been if they had stuck with an actual redemption of a character that we see being a jerk.
Yeah.
Because it still relies on, we're supposed to have an inherent like of Albus because he's Harry Potter's son. It's not a true, in my mind, redemption of... And the thing... Draco's the most obvious choice. It could have been any of the other Slytherins. It could have been Pansy. It could have been Blaise. I can't see Pansy having redemption. Well, but that's the, like... if you write it and you fill out her character a little bit more...
Yeah.
And then you write it in a way where, okay, maybe the main jerk of your story stays being a jerk, but maybe the jerk sidekick decides not to be a jerk. You could do that with Crabbe. You could do that with Goyle. You could do that with anybody in Slytherin who Harry saw as a jerk for most of the time, and then, things get complex, and then they can come out of it and realize that they shouldn't have done that.
Here's a deeper cut that I can see that particularly play out with. Blaise Zabini.
Blaise would have been great.
Because I could see him having like a distant relationship with his mom, and that turning him towards maybe a brighter side of Slytherin. I can buy that. I don't see why why she couldn't have written something where it would have been like Crabbe and his dad are super close, and he admires his dad same way that Draco admires his dad, and then he sees, his dad is getting mistreated by Voldemort. And then he starts to question it, and maybe there's some other things that happen in his home life, or he has other run-ins or whatever. And then in the very end, I think it was Crabbe was with Draco, and they were getting the diadem. Have him not be a jerk and cast Fiendfire and burn everything to the ground, but have him instead be like, "What am I doing?" Yeah. And help Harry and Ron destroy the Horcrux. It doesn't have to be this like big, huge redemption thing. I wish it would have been for Draco, but like you could still have something, right? Like you could still have him come up to Harry and be like, let me help in this way. I would love to have you on for that scene where I think we are, because that's during the Battle of Hogwarts. So yeah. I'm going to require that you're on. Yeah. At least talking about that chapter in some way, shape, or form. But it would be interesting because I think you see some of those steps in Draco in that scene he's starting to realize, like, why am I doing this?
Starting from the last book through the end of this book, you see all of these little moments that Draco has where he starts questioning things, where he's hesitant he's not you've got books 1 through 5 where he's this boastful, annoying little brat, and then you've got 6 and 7 where he starts to have moments where you're like, is it gonna click? Okay, wait. And then it never comes.
Never comes fully. It's always bits and pieces, fragments, and never the whole.
Right.
Yep.
And that's where it's like, you had it. You had it right there. You had it teed up for you. And you just didn't.
No, I get you.
Like, they don't have to be friends. It just would have been nice if he did something meaningful in the Battle of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
For the, for Harry, for the Gryffindors, for whatever.
I think it would be really cool if we got... I know they're coming out with the HBO live-action series, which they're announcing some more casting... Not announcing. They're having casting rumors all over the internet. So that's coming, hopefully, relatively soon. But I think it would be really cool if you want to do, like, maybe a cheaper animated version, and you played the events of the books in an animated version, but from the perspective of the other houses. Random character, a new, fresh character. Not even Mandy Brocklehurst, although I love me some Mandy Brocklehurst, but like a fresh character. Because she's come out and said that there are a bunch of characters that we never hear of, that she knows of, that are in these houses. So fresh character, new name that you never heard of, but their take and their perspective from Ravenclaw, from Hufflepuff, from Slytherin, a good Slytherin, that they're watching all of these events take place.
Yep.
And then you get that point of view. I think would be pretty cool.
I think that would be great.
And I wonder if you're going to get it with Hogwarts Legacy, because the rumor about Hogwarts Legacy is it's going to be connected to the HBO series, which if it's connected to the HBO series, that would inherently mean it's during the timeline of these books.
That's a good point.
So do you get to be a character in this world? That could be kind of interesting.
That would be really neat. Also, sidebar, a what-if series for Hogwarts would be
fantastic. If anyone from Warner Brothers, if anybody's listening that actually has power to do something in the Harry Potter universe, let us write something. We could do a great what-if series. Molly and I could do some great tangent work. Some bloopers. I think Molly and I pitched doing just the bloopers for the series.
Yeah.
Like, just nothing that's consequential to the actual thing. We'll just write the bloopers. It'll be great. We would love to have a piece of that. That'd be wonderful. But anyway, we should probably talk about some other spoilers that happened in the series and in this chapter. There's one particular spoiler that's really quick in how they find them so quickly. Is they mention in the diner... they say the words, Voldemort's taken over the Ministry of Magic. By saying the name Voldemort out loud, that name has now been labeled taboo, which is an interesting form of magic that we can get into a little bit later when they actually talk about it. Ron is the one that finds out the nature of it. But yeah, it's an interesting little piece of magic that gets the two Death Eaters right at the exact spot immediately after they say the name.
That was when I was doing the reread, I remembered that was going to be part of it. So I read the chapter and then I went back through the chapter to figure out where they had said it. And it is literally the sentence before, like, they say something about Voldemort, they pause for a moment, and that's when the two come in. And I just loved that that's like, so even as far back as this chapter, she's already planting that seed. So, like, she's already plotted this out. And I love little things like that in writing. Like, I love it when something that minor details like this that you don't notice on your first read because you don't notice it's a thing end up having a big part.
Here's my ridiculous 2 cents on it.
Okay.
They say the name, and then they appear in, like, workman-like clothes. Like, I'm picturing, like, overalls or, like, some whatever generic clothing. So were these two Death Eaters? I presume at least Dolohov was at the Burrow. Because why would you attack the Burrow and all the Order members and not have Dolohov with you? I assume both were at the Burrow. Did they take a time out to change? Is that part of the taboo where they disapparate and they just change clothes? Did they just tap themselves and a new wardrobe appeared before they walked into the diner?
I mean, that's a really good question.
Like, I'm just imagining, like, how did they just change clothes so unbelievably quickly?
Well, we were talking about earlier, what spell would you find most helpful? If there's a spell that I can just design my own outfits, just constantly,
I'm sure
I want that. That's my spell.
At the very least, change colors.
That's my spell.
Very least, change colors. I imagine you can probably change your wardrobe quickly.
That's my spell.
Or you can have, like, maybe your Death Eater robes come with a design function where they can just turn into something else immediately quickly.
No, we've been missing it this whole time. Tear away Death Eater cloaks.
Oh, that's it. Okay, gotcha. Like, you're getting ready to go into a game and you just, like, tear it away and, like, I'm here. Okay.
Yep.
I like it. That's good stuff. So, before we wrap up the chapter, I did promise something at the beginning of the chapter. And that was some of Jenn's takes from earlier episodes. There's one particular take that I think she has an issue with. We can get to the other takes, and she's going to be on for the next chapter, so we'll get some of her other takes, some of her takes at the end of Half-Blood Prince. We'll get to those in the next chapter, but what specifically did you have an issue with? Okay,
so I think that I'm fairly confident that I'm going to come across as a hypocrite for this.
Excellent.
And
I won't call you out for that at all.
Yeah, no. I haven't fully thought it through, so I'm sure that there's some nuance I could find here. But off the top of my head, one of the things that we had talked about briefly was you were surprised that Harry... Correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but my understanding is that you were surprised that Harry was reluctant to help out Scrimgeour as minister.
I think Harry needs to put forth a better effort with Rufus. Rufus ends up being his last words that we get are, we ought to be working together.
So, I see.
It's also an issue I have with Dumbledore. I thought he should have been more proactive fostering a relationship with the Minister of Magic.
I always kind of got the impression Dumbledore tried and it was Fudge who didn't want the relationship.
Fudge, yes.
Yeah.
Not Rufus.
How long has Rufus been minister?
Since the beginning of book 6.
Okay. So, that's like a school year.
But in that opening chapter, they're like, I've been trying to get a hold of Albus, and he's not responding, and Fudge is like, yeah, good luck with that. That's
fair. He is also dying, but at the same time,
we know that they had a disagreement over how to use Harry. We know that they've had a disagreement about Harry.
I think it's fair for Harry to not want to help the Ministry. And I think that as much as Rufus might not be Fudge, and he might be better than Fudge, and he might not be as blind to things, or he might be more willing to help his perspective, I think Harry has been consistently ignored by the Ministry. He probably dislikes, well, I mean, not even outright ignored, but sometimes outright prosecuted by the Ministry for things that...
Over the span of a year and a half, he was really taken through the coals.
Yeah, so I get his hesitation, but I also don't see what him working with the Ministry would really do. Like, he trusts Dumbledore, and Dumbledore gave him a job to do. I don't think he owes it to Rufus. Like, I think it's very much like a Rufus has a Ministry problem, and him working with Rufus would help smooth everything over, and oh, look, they're working together, and the optics are great, but Harry doesn't... What do you get from that? Like, Harry doesn't get anything from that.
I think Rufus is in a tough spot because he knows everything's crumbling around him, which isn't necessarily his fault. A lot of it lands on his predecessor and just how things have developed.
Yes.
I think Dumbledore would have been good to share some information like movements of Death Eaters, movements of the dark forces that Voldy is recruiting, so that Rufus could be a little bit more prepared to deal with some of those things from a Ministry standpoint. Obviously, the Order doesn't hate him because they've combined with him to provide protective enchantments, so they don't distrust him. They might distrust others in the Ministry, as they should, but they don't seem to distrust him personally.
Yeah.
So the idea of Harry being so antagonistic towards Rufus, why? Why Rufus? I get that Rufus has come off poorly.
Yes.
He's missaid some things that has come off wrong. And to Rufus's credit, usually he's been like, I overstepped. And he calls himself out for it. He's like, I overstepped. That was wrong. But the point still stands of, can you please help me out here?
I just don't... So the reason I think that I come across as a hypocrite is because I feel like Rufus is trying to use Harry, and I'm like, Harry doesn't need to deal with that. Like, Rufus should not be trying to use Harry. Dumbledore
very specifically
uses Harry, and I'm very ardently pro Dumbledore. So I get that that's hypocritical, but I see why Harry doesn't trust him. He misspeaks. He works for a government agency that has just completely dropped the ball every step of the way for Harry.
He's trying to do better, though.
He's trying to do better, but he's gotta... I think that this is just a timing thing. Like, I think if Rufus was in there for a couple years and was, like, willing to show Harry that he was working towards it, I feel like maybe this is a different conversation. I just don't think that Harry owes him anything, and at this point, Harry believes that what he has to do for Dumbledore is more important than anything else. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Harry is picking Dumbledore over Scrimgeour.
I guess. I just think it's a mistake.
I like Harry being like, I don't owe you anything. Because I think Harry knows that Scrimgeour, to some extent, is trying to manipulate him. And that's where I also think that this gets really dicey. I think if Scrimgeour had just been more upfront with Harry, it would have been a different conversation. But I think Harry can tell that he's trying to manipulate him, and Harry's like, I'm not dealing with this. Like, I don't owe you anything. He's trying to, like, guilt him into helping out. He's going about it in a very underhanded way, and Harry clocks it. And it's like, I'm not going to want to help someone out who's trying to guilt me into doing things.
I admire him for calling out Rufus on some issues that he has with the Ministry, as he should. I actually don't think he presses him enough on some things. I don't think he presses him nearly enough on Umbridge still being employed. I think he could have utilized his unique position, Harry Potter, with like, hey, can you send her to Azkaban? Like, send her to Azkaban and then we can at least talk. Like, that would be a starting point.
Okay, so I needed a refresher on this real quick. So this was one of the things that upset Harry was the arrest of Stan. Mm-hmm. And he knew that he was innocent, but Rufus...
He assumed he was innocent.
Harry?
Yes, because he knows Stan Shunpike, and he's like, well, he wouldn't knowingly be a Death Eater.
But the implication was that Scrimgeour was letting an innocent man stay in Azkaban to give the impression that the Ministry was actively doing things.
Right.
Okay. So, again, like, very much on Harry's side of, it is a reasonable conclusion that this person is innocent, and instead of doing anything to remedy this injustice, you are promoting it to give the impression that you're doing something when you're not.
Here's the thing with Stan Shunpike. He was sent to Azkaban for talking about Death Eater plans in the Leaky Cauldron. Mm-hmm. The question then becomes on Stan Shunpike. Was he Imperious at that point in time? And then he was talking about the plans. Or was he genuinely innocent and just an idiot talking about something he doesn't know about that landed him in prison? If he was Imperious at that time, he is a clear and present threat to the Wizarding World.
There's no other way that they could figure that out besides putting him in Azkaban, and because it's also not the problem that Harry has with Rufus is that, like, there's a really good line in the wiki page for this where it says that he's prioritizing appearances over truth, because the arrest of Stan is being presented as Stan was a Death Eater. If he's being Imperious or if he's just an idiot, both of those things are not as advertised. And that's what Harry is upset about. And that's why Harry ultimately decides that he doesn't want to work with Rufus, because Rufus isn't being openly honest with
So he doesn't
public.
like Fudge, who did nothing.
Right.
And he doesn't like Rufus, who's actually doing something that aligns with Harry's overall goal of stopping Voldy.
But is he, though? Because he arrested someone who wasn't a Death Eater and then portrayed him as a Death Eater.
Well, he was talking about Death Eater plans in the Leaky Cauldron.
Okay, but that's a different thing than being a Death Eater, right?
True.
Like,
yes. So
Harry doesn't want to work with someone who is being dishonest. And I don't fault him for that.
I get you. I think he's...
He was also being kind of a jerk when he was walking around asking him questions about, like, trying to get him to admit what Dumbledore was up to, which was also just shady.
Also, I love, and I don't think I actually mentioned this on a previous episode, so I'm going to take this opportunity to mention it now. The idea that Harry was even antagonistic towards him during the questioning of the will. Rufus said, did Albus think that the sword of Godric Gryffindor can defeat the heir of Slytherin? Right? And Harry's response is, oh, I don't know. Why don't you try poking him with a sword and see if that'll work? Right? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, two things about that. One, Harry, you know, and I'm talking directly to Harry Potter here, Harry, you know you wanted that sword the most out of the 3 items that were given. You know you wanted that sword the most.
Yeah.
You know you did. Yeah. You're just being salty about it, okay? I'm just saying. And two, yes, if you poked him with the sword, it would have worked. Because it's covered in basilisk venom and it would have killed Voldy. So, two fronts, yes, the sword would work. And you wanted it, you know you did. So
he was just cranky that he wasn't getting it.
100%. And then he got all salty with Rufus.
I mean, I don't blame him for that.
So I didn't say that on the last episode, and I wanted to get that point across, like, Harry, Be honest with yourself just a second.
I think that when you look at it in the context of, like, Harry just wants to work with someone who's going to be truthful with him, just open and truthful. He's got to, let me qualify that to 3 things. Believe him,
Okay.
be open, and be truthful. Those are the 3 virtues that Harry values above all. And that he consistently gets let down on 99% of the time by all of the adults in the room.
All of them, you're right, though. All of the adults in the room.
Yes.
Including the ones he holds closest
I know,
to him.
and that's why I'm a hypocrite. But that's why I'm saying
Okay.
I understand why Harry does, when he sees it being open in front of him, when he can identify it, he's going to be sassy. And he's going to be aggressive, and he's not going to want to work with you. I don't think he fully clocks a lot of that from Dumbledore until much later. But again, I'm a hypocrite, so it's fine. I think he could have handled the matter more tactfully. But I don't disagree with his ultimate decision of just being like, no.
I will give you that at this point in time, with the Ministry being like, let's say 75% lost, and Dumbledore being gone, I don't know how much Harry can add without revealing the overall plan of the Horcruxes,
Right.
which I fully agree should not be outside of the 3, the trio.
I can also see why he doesn't want to be like the poster child for the Ministry, because he's always been, people have always tried to take advantage of him in that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like Lockhart did that, and that went well.
Yes, but Lockhart is definitely not Rufus. Those
No,
are 2 different people.
but they are manipulative in the same way. They see benefit by him being front and center and aligned with them, and oh look, I've got this guy and he agrees with me and he just happens to be the chosen one, so isn't that all great? Now you can trust me. And it's like that, you haven't earned that trust. You haven't earned the ability for Harry to put his neck out for you. I'm like, no.
Well, I'm sure it won't be the last time we talk some Dumbledore or some Harry sacrifice or all of the above. So we will get some more of your thoughts on the end of Half-Blood Prince and the beginning of Deathly Hallows in the next chapter, which you'll be on next week. It's Creature's Tale, so you get some Slytherin stories
I love
as
this
well.
chapter so much.
So there's a lot to look forward to in Creature's Tale in Chapter 10 next week. So please join us for that. Thank you all for listening. Please comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Participate in the poll. And we will see you next week. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.